Welcome back to the March to Monarchism. I am Michael. Today I'll be discussing the most common defenses of democracy and criticisms of monarchism. There are 11 entries in total today, so let's just get started. Number 1. Monarchism is tyrannical. If there's one thing you remember from this video, remember this fact. Most kings throughout history were not tyrants. The definition of tyrant is a sovereign or other ruler who uses power oppressively or unjustly. So if you want to believe that definition applies to all or even most historical kings, well, good luck proving that. If oppression was the norm for monarchy, then monarchism wouldn't be the world's oldest form of government nor the most consistent. Nothing lasts if it can't last. Human beings can't produce great works of art under oppression, as great works of art require imagination that is not strangled by fear. This is why places like North Korea don't produce wondrous works of art, and even their music is stale and always about the dear leader. A successful enterprise can't begin under oppressive circumstances because the tyrant will either make it illegal or the tyrant will just take it over and make sure that he gets the credit for it. I could go on. The point is, any kind of greatness you can think of couldn't have been created from a state of oppression. It's just not how human nature works. Yet, the greatest works of art came from the Dark Ages, as it is erroneously known. One of the problems with the American mindset since America's founding is the obsession with freedom, or the belief that America has a monopoly on freedom. A society can't even function if it doesn't have a minimal degree of freedom. Too much freedom, and it can't function either. Again, that's just how human nature works. If everyone got killed or imprisoned under the monarchical system because they failed to meet quotas, such as a fisherman not catching enough fish or a farmer not producing enough viable crops, then nothing would have ever gotten done at all. The accusation that monarchism is innately tyrannical is just nonsense anyway. A system where only one person can make laws and declare war, and he is given these powers by birthright. Monarchism is the epitome of small government. A monarch can be a tyrant, but a monarch has the least incentive to be a tyrant. A king can't be bribed because what money could you bribe a king with anyway? A king can't be corrupted with the promise of power because he already has all the power. When you think of a dictator, maybe you're thinking of Hitler, Stalin, or Mao. These are people who achieved ultimate power through brutality, not birthright. And they are rarely official rulers anyway, only being rulers in practice, not on paper. Communism, a system that has never gone without a tyrant, is not even supposed to have hierarchies, since that's the whole point of communism. So of course there isn't supposed to be a sole leader on paper. To become dictator, one has to make everyone around them too scared to oppose them. But technically, anyone could take his power by manipulating others against him. People are far less fearful of a king because he wields power by birthright. Their power is quite literally written into law. Number 2, democracy equals freedom. This one couldn't possibly make less sense. Democracy in theory means that ultimate power lies in the hands of the majority. It's about where power lies, so why would that equate to freedom exactly? The majority still has the power to take away your freedoms if they choose. If you belong to a racial minority, a religious minority, a nationality minority, an ideological minority, nothing about democracy means the majority will respect your freedom or respect anything about you. Democracy, by definition, is the will of the majority, not the will of the minority. Number 3, monarchies are big government. Monarchies are big government. I already mentioned this. Monarchies are the epitome of small government. In fact, you literally can't get smaller government than a government of one. There is no smaller minority than the individual. Only one man can make laws. Only one man can change laws. Only one man can declare war. Everyone in his government is there to enforce his will, nothing more. Democracy requires big government. Yes, requires it. People often try to distance republicanism from democracy, but in reality, republicanism only exists to make democracy even have the veneer of functionality. The two shouldn't even be different words, in my opinion, just like communism and socialism shouldn't be different words. Anyway, democracy, to function at all, requires a vast bureaucratic apparatus. You need offices for this, offices for that, departments for this, departments for that. People whose entire careers revolve around niche duties of the government, and those specific people need their own task forces, secretaries, lawyers, lobbyists, and on and on. Any government so vast is incapable of operating on a small budget like that of a monarchy. Yes, we'll get to that later. Ever wonder why your taxes are so high? You have a bloated government. You have a bloated government that has its claws in everything. Not only is this innate to democracy, but it's also inevitable as well, as people will continually vote to have the government make their lives better for them. In other words, if you don't want a million laws on taxes or a million laws on where you can plant a tree, then don't make it the job of hundreds of people to do nothing all day but come up with these laws and lobby for them and enforce them. Their departments are their entire job. They do nothing else. See, when everything in a government is left up to one man's decision, it's only natural that the laws on the books will be fewer and simpler. Much simpler. Number 4, monarchies are too expensive. Speaking of taxes, one common argument against monarchism is that it's too expensive. At this point, I'm already starting to repeat myself. Monarchism, and to be exact, absolute monarchism, is the epitome of small government. It naturally has fewer and simpler laws on the books for this reason. Instead of a tax code, the king simply decides what the tax rate is. There is no fat to trim in the government. So why would this mean your government is too expensive to operate? Again, look at history. Monarchy is the most common, most consistent form of government. If they're too expensive to operate, why are they so consistent across thousands of years? From 2021 to 22, the UK monarchy cost the taxpayer roughly £1.29 per person. On the other hand, the UK's democracy costs £1.226 trillion, with the latest population estimate being 67,596,000. That means the UK's democracy costs £18,137 per person. So which is the bigger number? 1.29 or 18,137? You decide. Now, I understand that the system would be different if the monarchy had any real power, like it used to, but no sane person could legitimately conclude that a simpler government would be more expensive. I mean, look at this chart. Social protection, education. In a true monarchy, the government isn't going to tax you to death because it doesn't try to be your savior, like democracies devolve into. And when I say true monarchy, by the way, I mean absolute monarchy, the only actual form of monarchy that there is. One rules all. Just in case that wasn't clear already. Number 5, we have more prosperity since the rise of democracy. Do we have more prosperity or more consumerism? One thing I'm certain of as I've gotten older is that growth or progress, just for their own sakes, are not good things. Just because you have fancier toys doesn't mean life for you or for everyone is improved. And that is where I stand with this. We have more consumerism, not prosperity. Poverty has not been cured. We just have better stuff. We have better toys, and we have machines that will make your life cozier, but that doesn't mean your life is better. Most people these days aren't even close to being happy. The only true improvement over the prior centuries is the fact that death is no longer a close companion. You can have 10 children with all 10 of them surviving into adulthood now. But apart from that fact, life has not truly improved, as poverty has not been cured, and it is still highly expensive to enjoy nice things or to even have good health care. Things always change, but that doesn't mean change is good. Number 6, democracy has brought more peace than any time before. This couldn't be more wrong. There were no world wars until the age of democracy. The Second World War specifically caused more deaths than any previous war. Communism was born in the age of democracy, and it is responsible for more deaths than every other ideology in human history combined. There are still wars taking place right now as you hear this, with escalations also occurring right now. We can all feel it in the air. The average lifespan of a democracy is about 200 years, which means America, the closest thing humanity has to a stabilizing force, is about 35 years overdue for collapse. Whatever illusion of peace you have now, it's about to be shattered. Number 7, democracy is the only way to keep power in check. The absurdity of this, I don't even know where to begin. It is still ultimate power that we are talking about here. It just lies with the majority of the population instead of one person or a few people. Nothing about giving power to the majority or to representatives ensures that power will be kept in check. You can always vote them out. Well, best case scenario, the people can only vote out corruption if they either know about it or don't accept it. Anyone who makes this point has to prove that the people will always know about corruption and will always stand against corruption. Will the people stand against corruption if that corruption favors their tribe or favors outcomes that they want? Of course not. The people are just as susceptible to corruption as any politician. It's all human nature. You'd have to be a fool to believe Joe Biden stepped down from his 2024 presidential campaign of his own volition. But what do Democrat voters even care why he stepped down? They will stand by Kamala Harris no matter what, simply because she's their nominee now. It doesn't matter how she got there. Tribalism will tribalism. Blue no matter who is not a rallying cry, it's doctrine. And all of this is assuming that the people have any say in the first place. Well, I hate to break it to you, but they don't. Elections can be rigged in countless ways, not just the select few ways the media wants you to believe. Not to mention it's possible that someone just refuses to give up power. And elections will always be rigged in some way. That's just human nature. Human beings have always wanted power, and they will always acquire power by any means they think they can get away with. But even if elections couldn't be rigged, it's still not the people who are in power. It's their representatives and the ultra-wealthy, and, depending on the country, the military and the clergy. The only time the people have any real power is when they exercise that power, by burning everything to the ground. I'm talking about revolution. Only when the people become a mob do they have any power. Until then, they are just sheep following orders. Number 8, democracy can't be corrupt. We already covered this to an extent. The people can be just as corrupt as any politician. But to drive this home further, I want to draw your attention to this. Yes, people become less intelligent when they're in groups. Name a single political activist group that behaves more rationally when they gather. Democracy encourages groupthink. It damn near requires it. The individual is of no consequences. It's all about numbers, the collective. Even in its purest form, democracy steers society in the wrong direction through its incentive for groupthink. Now think of the word mob. What comes to mind besides the mafia? You're most likely thinking of a large mass of people succumb to anger and not remotely in the mood to sit down and discuss something. Are you seeing where I'm going here? Democracy is corruption. It stifles rational thought. It is a game of numbers. It is meant to appeal to the lowest common denominator. At best, you are ruled by the stupidest people, and at worst, you are ruled by the most corrupt people, who only became politicians to acquire power. There's nothing genuine or dignified about democracy. Number 9, democracy can't be oppressive. Democracy can't be oppressive. This is hilarious because, as I've already explained, democracy is the rule of the majority. That is innately oppressive. And as I've already stated, if you belong to any kind of minority in a democracy, you are at the mercy of vastly greater numbers than your own. Democracy, by design, needs to greatly reel back its oppressive nature. Otherwise, it's oppressive from the start. And even then, it will always become oppressive later on. Always. Monarchism has to go out of its way to be oppressive, because as I've explained before, a king has minimal incentive to be oppressive. He is the law. He is the government. He can't be bought because he already controls the money, and he can't be seduced with power because he already has all the power. In this regard, democracy and monarchism are opposites. Monarchism requires conscious effort to be oppressive. Democracy requires conscious effort not to be oppressive. Number 10, hereditary power is ridiculous and impractical. What, as opposed to someone achieving power via a popularity contest? Monarchism is a private government akin to a family business, and like a family business, the job is taught to every new generation so that the reins can be passed with ease when the time comes. The heir to the throne receives training from birth before he gets the job from the guy already doing the job, which is no different from any other kind of family business. If the king dies before his heir is old enough, then a regent rules for a time, and that regent is part of the heir's family. If a king dies before his heir is old enough, a regent rules for a time, and that regent is part of the heir's family. There is usually always someone old enough to rule, even if not officially, and that person is always family. Relatives have stronger bonds with each other than politicians will ever have with each other, especially when most politicians get rotated out every few years. In other words, it's not truly just one person who rules in a monarchy. It's the collective effort of a family, though indirectly. And it's a collective effort of that family and those closest to them in status. Yes, other families help them rule as well. Rich and powerful families can provide the monarch with wise counsel and become heads of different parts of their government, such as the military, the economy, or espionage. In case you still don't get it, hereditary rule is a failsafe, and it is an objectively better failsafe than a vice president. In a system of politicians instead of rulers, you're just a guy who sought power, and if you die, you pass that power on to some other random guy who just wanted power. In a monarchy, governing is your life, not just a job. Everything depends on you doing your job well. Number 11. Democracy is new, monarchy is outdated. Well, as of 2024, 43 sovereign states are still monarchies. Not all of them are absolute monarchies, but they are monarchies nonetheless. So there's that. 5th century BC Athens is the earliest known democratic state, predating the birth of Christ by 5 centuries. There's even evidence of prehistoric democracies. No, democracy is nothing new, not even close. Representative democracy, which I call democracy's attempt at being functional, but most people call republicanism, was Rome's government, also before the birth of Christ. So no matter which way you slice it, voting and power to the people are not new concepts whatsoever. Democracy has enough history for us to study it thoroughly, and thanks to its history, we know this: democracy never lasts, and monarchism does. Monarchism works. Why is that? Well, human nature is the same today as it was before recorded history. The ignorant masses believe that the way we did things in the past was just happenstance, and that we just didn't feel like changing it. As if once upon a time we tried out kings and emperors and we just never thought of anything else. It requires a substantial degree of arrogance to believe that you, in your time period, are the first ones to think of, well, anything. History is not a series of happenstances from which humans just didn't feel like changing from. No, that's not how the past works. We are the same intelligent animals with the same nature. Time is the great tester of all things. Time definitively tells us what works and what doesn't work. And at this point, humanity has put a great deal of investment into every form of government. The rule of none, the rule of one, the rule of a few, the rule of many, and the rule of all, with only one consistently surviving the test of time. In conclusion, I just hope that I've made it clear that all defenses of democracy and all criticisms of monarchism are just feelings-based. How many people do you know who praise democracy have ever truly given the subject any serious thought or study? In the West, we worship democracy as a religion. Well, the true name of this religion is equality, and democracy is just an offshoot of this religion. The belief that no one is superior to another, nobody is better than anyone else, this is nothing more than a fantasy. Some people are fit to rule. Most people are not. It's most baffling hearing this nonsense from Christians, when one of the core tenets of Christianity is that some make it to heaven and most don't. There's no equality in that. Christianity itself disparages the idea that everyone is equal. All are inferior to God, but not equally inferior. This is why I say equality is the religion of the West, because Christianity has no love for the idea of equality. All throughout the Bible, God meant for kings to rule, not presidents, and certainly not presidents voted in by the people, but rather true rulers appointed by God himself. The Bible is extremely pro-hierarchy and pro-monarchy. Democracy is not endorsed by Scripture at all. This is how humans were made, whether you believe in God or not. Kings rule over people. We operate nearly everything in life like a monarchy. It should be the same with government. Kings rule over the people, men rule over women and children, and humans are meant to rule over the animals. And all who rule are meant to remain submissive to the will of God. This religion of equality needs to go if the West is going to survive.